Folks, thanks so much for tuning in. You don't want to miss a couple of things for sure. Look who's calling Donald Trump the Antichrist and wants him killed. Also, Donald Trump, the President of the United States, will be on national television and going international with a major announcement tonight. Nobody's quite sure what that's about, but let's talk about that today. You want to clue in on that and look at what Gen Z are they returning to Hollywood along with a new superstar, the world's GQ magazine. Look who's calling the world's biggest crush right now, and why that has happened. So jump right in. First of all, before we get to the announcement about tonight, whatever that's going to be discussed by President Trump when he goes live. There is a U.S. bill, and it's not coordinating, but combining with at the same time a Canadian bill relative to what we're going to do with daylight saving time. It's always been an issue. The U.S. is moving to formalize it. It just has to pass in the Senate. And interesting to see in Canada what's going on with that, going to forever change our lives. You can decide whether that's in a big way or a small way. Saskatchewan, British Columbia, the Yukon, Alberta have already taken steps in this regard, and they're saying no more of the changing the time clocks, flipping back and forth. Ontario has said they will standardize it as long as Quebec and New York, the state of New York, do it, major trading partners for Ontario. So they're kind of waiting. Fascinating thing just from a political point of view. In Quebec, polls show 91% of the citizens of Quebec, 91% want to see the daylight saving time thing standardized. They're tired of it flipping back and forth, and the politicians are hesitating, not wanting to do it. So, just a little lesson there in democracy. 91% of the people want to do it. The politicians are saying no. But let's keep in mind that our political representatives, they are sent to whichever jurisdiction they're representing to represent the views of the people. They are supposed to be our servants. Doesn't mean we treat them in not nice ways. We treat them respectfully, but they are to do what we expect. And so, interesting anomaly there in Quebec, just on the socio-political side. It's called the Sunshine Protection Act in the United States, and now there's a corresponding act. This is going to be emerging in the U.S. as well, and Canada, because there's another piece of legislation that's being called the Protecting Children Sunshine Act. And what these groups are saying is, okay, if you're going to do it, if you're going to leave it, then leave it in the situation where in the fall, remember the little formula that we've always had to try and figure out and remember, okay, when do we set the times forward? When do we send them back? Remember that little thing we've been taught all our lives: spring forward, fall back. Spring forward, fall back. So in the spring, we set the clocks forward. In the fall, you set them back. And what the advocating for children and sunshine, what that group is doing is seeming to having some attention from lawmakers. They're saying, okay, if you're going to standardize it, if you're not going to be moving it back and forth, keep it at standard time. So the picture is that there is more sunshine, more daylight, especially in the early morning hours. Kids waiting for buses or kids being driven to school. So picture it this way: if it's 7 a.m., you're looking at 7 a.m., let's say, through the summer and through the fall, and then it's getting increasingly darker. You move it back in the fall, you move it back an hour. So the sunlight that you were getting at 7 a.m., now you reset it on your clock at 6 a.m. So you're getting more sunlight early in the morning, and that's where these folks who are lobbying on behalf of health and children and safety are saying, okay, keep it, but do it at the fall setting so we get more of the early morning light. Let's see where it goes and see how it continues to move. All right, back to Iran. Things definitely cranking up, and we're seeing this right across the board. We're seeing it reflected now when oil and gas prices had been dropping precipitously, and we see now they're slowly moving back up. Markets are nervous, and the government of Tehran, because the U.S. has hit back at Tehran, in Iran, the regime there continuing to hit ships in the Strait of Hormuz, and Iran really ratcheting it up in terms of the dialogue. We don't know exactly where it's going to go, but we do know that the first layer of leadership was taken out a number of months ago. The secondary layer of leaders, they're down to their third layer, and when is it going to end, and why don't the people rise up? Keep in mind that it's estimated that in January, the Iranian regime killed approximately 52,000 people. Now, 52,000 people. The population of Iran is about 91 million, and as the Muslim Islamist regime in Iran has learned from communists, from the Soviets, and from the Marxists, is that you only have to kill a few people to keep everybody else in line, but you've got to kill them very publicly. It's got to be in the town square. It's got to be in a sporting arena. It's got to be where everybody can see, and you only have to kill a relatively few. Well, 52,000 is not relatively few. Some people might say of 91 million, it is a few, but it's a gigantic number. You can picture this then in cities across Iran, witnessing thousands of people literally being slaughtered right in broad daylight in the town square, in major intersections, hanged by cranes. This regime, which continues to get comparatively little scrutiny and really comparatively little hard talk from media or even the United Nations, keeping people in check that way. Uh, there's some interesting commentary from experts, so-called experts in the field. Hugh Hewitt over at the Salem Radio Network has an interesting speculation. He and some others are saying that as we get down now to this third tier of leadership, call them the colonels rather than the generals, they may tend to be less focused on, what's called the 12er philosophy. We've talked about that before. That's the regime in Iran believing that they are waiting for the prophetic arrival of the 12th Imam, who is going to then vaporize Jews everywhere, vaporize the nation of Israel, bring about nuclear calamity so that all of them can get straight to heaven and enjoy the 72 virgins waiting for them there. This level of colonels seems to be maybe, there's still going to be hard line, but not quite as as caught up in this psychopathic theological approach, and therefore might be willing to rule without threatening the rest of the world. They may be content to run their own regime. We're going to see how that works out. There was a recent sign, a woman who had been abducted, a U.S. woman abducted uh, and held in captivity for 2 years. Dina Karari has just been released to the U.S. By the Iranians. Sometimes the Iranians will do this just to show that they're softening a bit, but it's an interesting timing that they have released her. I have been to Iran. I've been to Tehran. I know what it is to meet secretly with people who have had their loved ones, virtually kidnapped by the government. There's a knock at the door late at night. The door opens. The husband, or in some cases the wife, is simply arrested and scurried away in vehicles, armed guards, and they never see them again. And it's a terrifying thing. And so families do not like speaking up because they don't want this government-sanctioned kidnapping to be taking place. So they're trying to read the tea leaves right now. Is this a sign of softening? The release of this hostages we're going to see. Well, reports again, economic reports again throughout the United States, city of New York, city of Los Angeles, continuing to lose people. And the people they lose are the entrepreneurs, are the innovators, the people who have businesses and create jobs. And Florida and Texas are not the only states. There are other states and other areas and cities that have any place that has more respectful levels of taxes, not horrendously high taxes, and common sense regulations where people aren't bogged down by a regulatory regime, and less of a woke philosophy ratcheting through their institution. These are the states, these are the cities that are gaining. We're seeing the same thing in Canada as more people are leaving, as we've said, British Columbia. People coming to the province of Alberta, which is known and historically as more small c conservative, more respectful of individuals, more welcoming of entrepreneurs and innovators. Even if they do get rich, they don't get punished. So we'll see if that trend continues. And very interesting to see in an alarming way. We've been talking the last few days about increased violence, and not just increased violence, but the acceptability of violent statements or violent action, and even some of those not just being accepted by mainstream media, but in fact perpetrated by mainstream media. And the stats, as I've said before, show consistently that it can happen right across the board. Politically, you get these extremist nut bars, but it's significantly more from the left. However, I've got to choke that back a little bit, because in Florida, you have somebody running for office, a former U.S. Marine. His name is William Upham, and he's just gone very public and televised the fact that he says he believes in the Bible, and he believes that Donald Trump is the Antichrist, and he believes he should be killed, that Trump should be killed. So this is astounding that it's tolerated. This type of language is tolerated. We all believe, or hopefully we believe, in freedom of expression, but there are limits on that. We're going to see if there are any steps taken to curb this type of violent discussion. Trump, talking about speaking, is going to be speaking tonight. President Trump speaking tonight in a major message, and he's being kind of coy, not talking what that's about, but we want to tune in and see what his message is there. He says it's going to surprise people. We recall there's been some studies, very recent studies coming out of Africa. We recall when Donald Trump just got reelected this second time, coming on to almost, not quite, but almost 2 years ago. One of the things that where he purported to be saving billions and billions of dollars was the slashing of what's called U.S. aid, mainly to Africa. And we look now to what percent has huge hundreds of million dollars going to African countries, and that's been reduced by about 87%, so just about wiped out. And people across the board were crying out and saying, this is doom, this is going to plunge Africa into such depths of darkness and need and poverty, and it's going to crush the continent. And it was called the commercial diplomacy strategy. And now we've had some time to evaluate, and we're seeing, according to the Bureau of African Affairs, following these radical reductions of really what are massive welfare payments to struggling nations in Africa, there is significant recovery being reported, economic recovery. And this goes in line with what many of us have believed, a small c conservative perspective relative to aid and relative to assistance, that you have to be careful. It has to be the people truly in need. And if you are helping people, take pressure off them not to be working or not to becoming better trained or educated, that it can be a negative thing. It seems to be playing out that way. Many countries rebounding now as they're having to figure it out for themselves. Less welfare available. Certainly we found that out in the province of Alberta. I was Minister of Social Services at one point, and when we put the emphasis on retraining people and equipping people to work, and when we told people who were healthy and capable that they were going to not be receiving what's called passive welfare, in fact, we see people will go back to work, they will get educated, but they have to know that type of welfare, we call it passive welfare, is not going to be coming forward, and that is seeming to be the case in many African countries. There's the health concern was also voiced in terms of, if you stop the free money coming to the hundreds of millions of dollars, what's it going to do to health outcomes, especially? One of the things that is found and known, and this is not unique to African countries, this happens in North American countries, is that the political leaders can actually be the ones who try and benefit from these huge amounts of money coming into them from other areas. And when that is reduced, you wind up it forces leadership to start thinking in terms of solutions. The health concerns of the one country in Africa, according to this report that I've just referenced, is still South Africa. South Africa continues to have the highest rates rates of HIV/AIDS in the entire world. And again, has the social welfare problem been a contributor there, or can it be used to deal with that problem? It's early stages. We're still working to see what's happening as you see a reduction in hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's been going on for years and years and years, and it has not reduced the level of HIV/AIDS in South Africa. So let's see what they come through there. Interesting commentary by one of the well-known journalist Noel Randowich in the U.S. talking about the markets, because there's a lot of anxiety right now. SpaceX shares, remember SpaceX had that phenomenal over $1 trillion IPO that's called an initial public offering, where they go what's called going public in terms of people and large institutions being able to buy the shares. SpaceX set all records in that just a few weeks ago, and now the stock has tumbled about 33%. That's a big drop, but you have to consider, as Randowich points out here and other economists are pointing out, it rocketed up. SpaceX hit the rockets, went into orbit quite literally in terms of pricing, and now this is a normal and expected down settling that happens. We'll see if that's true. People close to the matter are saying this is not a panic situation, that life is evolving as they predicted. We'll wait and see on that. Well, today being Wednesday was a major day in China, because the government ruled and has followed through with their ruling that they are cutting off by internet. They are cutting off the availability of people to have bots. You know, it's called like your personal companion on AI. We're all familiar with that. You can get those types of relationships on any of these AI platforms. Certainly I use ChatGPT quite a bit, use Claude somewhat, and the odd time use Grok. But the assistants, everybody knows, it's just like talking to a human being, and their algorithm is programmed so that they are very friendly to you. They respond to the types of questions, but also what's behind those questions. And the addiction rate to the bots in China is so staggeringly high that the government there has actually shut it down. They have completely shut it down. We're going to see what kind of reaction happens I mean, here you got a country, hundreds and hundreds of millions of people that are completely addicted to their companion bots now being shut down. People are already talking about they don't know if they'll be able to survive. They have such a beautiful, wonderful love affair with their bots and with their AI companions. They don't know what they're going to do. So we're going to see if that plays out. It's not just China. Interesting reports coming out of South Korea with the development, the fantastic ability with robots, combine that with the AI capability, and they're finding, for instance, in seniors' homes, these automated dolls is what they are, that are becoming real companions to seniors who are in seniors' facilities, and it lightens the load on the care providers having to provide the emotional support. This is a brand new, it's a brand new era, folks. Brave new world. We'll see how it goes. Reports that came out yesterday shows 3/4, almost 76% of teenagers in the US, and it would be a similar figure in Canada, are what people are defining as significantly addicted to their companion bots, having very close emotional and even love affairs with their bots. Very concerning. Well, while that's going on, reports are, as we've reported here over the last year or so, there was, for a couple of years, we were seeing a trend of Gen Z and even millennials to agree not going to movies anymore, don't have the attention span to watch something of an hour and a half in length. And reports and receipts coming out now partway through this year shows that, in fact, 87% of Gen Z, Gen Z are reporting they are and they have been going back to the movies. 82% of millennials. Hollywood receipts are noticing this. The major production companies are noticing this return. They're saying it's a combination of things. An IMAX type experience, that's where either 3D or the fabulous development, the camera development capabilities is drawing people back. And then the fact that you can sit in beautifully designed chairs and tilt back and have food delivered to you. So it's not only a communal experience, it's almost a high level seen as a restaurant experience. And the other significant factor is that movies, Hollywood seems to have gotten the message most of the movies, not all, most of them are less woke, less promoting really heavily cranked, call it leftist values, more family, it seems family friendly movies, and horror and action movies, and some of the animated movies really doing well, especially those that are family oriented. So interesting trend coming out there. We talked about the trend related to violence in the public square, talking about that in the last few days in Canada. Just yesterday, we saw a really nasty scene where the premier of the province of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston is his name, doing the right thing as a politician, and was announcing a tour going from city to city, speaking to chambers of commerce, getting feedback on what people felt government should or should be doing out there in the province. And first got hit with a protest. It was a peaceful protest, and it was by people who worried about cutting to library funding, so that was fine. His cavalcade would pull up, and they would be. But that began to be joined. The protest crowds got louder and got to be violent in terms of at one point surrounding his vehicle, smashing the windows in the vehicle, which is a frightful experience for anybody. Clearly getting into situations where people can get hurt, if not killed. So the library protesters, the peaceful one, were joined by combinations of groups, those who were opposed to fracking. Of course, that's a process of getting refining product that you're getting out of the ground. Some of the supporters of and members of the Mi'kmaq community concerned and upset about not being able to grow all the cannabis they want. Put all these groups together, many of which are funded internationally by especially leftist organizations, especially those who would be upset and appealing about liquid natural gas and the development of hydrocarbons, etc. The part of the answer there, folks, this is a frightful development to see in Canada. Certainly, you don't see this as you do see in other countries, but the car being smashed, windows being broken, folks, this is how people get hurt. This is how people get killed. And what has to happen is the police need to be, there's this alarming thing. I talked about it on a media show yesterday. There's this alarming tendency among police officers, and it's given to them, passed down from the brass from above, that they tend to side with those on the leftist side of the equation. Often they are not arrested. Folks, when this type of violence happens, it is criminal. People need to be arrested. They need to go to court, and if found guilty, they need to be charged. There needs to be penalties associated with this, and it needs to be very publicly announced. For instance, people are still not aware that depending on what you get charged with, you may never be allowed to cross the border into another country. You want to be captive in Canada. That's one way to do it. Get arrested and charged. It has to be publicized. Got to make it very public if somebody gets charged, and what are the ramifications of that. That's one way of slightly pushing back on this type of activity. Right now, protesters think because the police are going to be largely friendly to them, that they can smash and crash at will. Dangerous message. It has to be fixed. Many of the protests that we see on TV, just keep this in mind, or on your device, many of those protests, yes, they do look organized because they are organized, and many are funded by organizations from the United States. It's interesting. People in Canada say they don't want to do with anything with U.S., but they certainly don't mind these leftist groups being financed from the left, and it needs to be dealt with and publicly. The interesting as far as watching the World Cup, and we talked about what was going to happen in the match between Argentina and the UK. And of course, as you know by now, Argentina won, and Lionel Messi was the star, this time assisting on 2 of the goals. So he worked his magic, and we'll see what happens if things move on to the final there. In the world of never mind athletic challenge, but in terms of what you can say publicly, in Canada, there's just a lawsuit been settled out. And here's a situation where you have a podcast team. It was a husband and wife team on a show called Northern Perspective. This is Ryan and Tanya Davies. And they got into some time ago they'd had a long running feud with another podcaster. This guy's name was Spencer Butts. And at one point, he actually accused them, this was a couple of years ago, of actually stuff I don't even like to repeat on the air here, but some really nasty accusations related towards this couple, related towards their autistic child. And folks, we still do have defamation laws in Canada. You still have them in the United States. And the couple, the Davies, did file suit against this guy. And yesterday, it was determined that he was guilty of defamation. There are certain things that still you can't and shouldn't be able to say. There is no such thing as 100% freedom of speech. There are some things where people can protect themselves from this wrong speech. So, frankly, I was glad to see that the award was given, that the person was found guilty of defamation and has to pay costs. Many of us feel, in looking at the case, the cost should have been higher, but at least it establishes that you can protect yourself and people can't just say anything they want. Well, in the sports world, more and more people are getting attracted to sports because the big sporting networks, whether we're talking about the NFL, whether we're talking about the NHL, even college, and now with FIFA, they're finding it's not just athletic prowess that brings you a following, but you can be attractive in other ways. And GQ magazine is calling Jude Bellingham, who plays for UK actually in the off season, not the off season, when it's not a World Cup year, he plays for Real Madrid, which gets a huge team. They get all kinds of coverage worldwide. He's 23 years old. They say he's the world's most significant crush right now. More people falling in love with him. He's huge on Instagram, and people have been watching him in the games. He was popular before that to a degree because he was playing for a popular, well-known team, Real Madrid. But now he's seen as the world's biggest crush. And when they're analyzing why him, well, of course, he's a good-looking guy, so that definitely helps. But people have the sense that he treats people well. He treats children well, treats others well, respectful of women. These things seems to come across, and he doesn't take sort of the traditional, if I can use the term, badass, hardcore athlete strutting around, exuding arrogance. He comes across as not arrogant, comes across as kind of humble and likable, and he's rocketing through the roof in terms of his endorsements and millions of followers. So good for Jude Bellingham. We talked about at the start of the podcast the reduction in grants to African countries, and there's some stories in media in a couple of different areas today in Kenya how the churches have stepped up in a very significant way. Once the government funding backs down, churches step in and motivated to help people. So in Kenya, we're seeing the churches taking up a lot of the slack by the slashing of some of the international foreign aid program. And another report today and yesterday out of the magazine Christianity Today talking about phenomenal work going on in the northern province of India. We touched on this about a week ago, and there's more details coming out. It's in the Arunachal Pradesh territory and province, and it borders on Myanmar and Tibet. And people that particular area, because of the opium trade there, huge area, entire region of drug addiction and dependency, and real breakthroughs being made there by the Christian community in terms of reaching out evangelically, and people increasingly reporting changed lives and complete removal from addiction in their lives. Some positive stuff going on, folks. It shows that some of the best things, in fact, do not occur from government, but they come from the people and the heart of the people. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you tomorrow.